The bus rushed off the bridge, and I fell into the river, losing consciousness. When I woke up, a man in a neatly tailored suit was sitting by the hospital bed. Hi, it was you who saved me? I asked. Don't you recognize me? I carefully examined him and finally saw the familiar look in his eyes. Marion? How did you get so old? Marion's expression was hard to maintain. Celia, I'm already 30. What? I slept for 10 years? Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. I was processing this shocking fact. I, Celia, was still a bright and youthful college student. How did I wake up 10 years older after just one sleep? And Marion, my crush, I haven't even slept with him yet. How did he get old? The man beside me was dressed in a well-tailored suit, clearly expensive. His hair was slicked back, and I recognized the brand of his watch, Patek Philippe. I didn't expect Marion to be so wealthy 10 years later. But he looked a bit haggard, with heavy eye bags, and even seemed to have gained some weight. Damn it, give me back the 6 feet 2 inches tall sunny college boy. Marion was a financial prodigy, played basketball and tennis. Half of the girls in college were crazy about him. I was one of them. Before the accident, I was preparing to confess to Marion. I was waiting for him downstairs at his dorm, but then I saw him returning with Molly. They were affectionately hugging in front of everyone. Molly's eyes always seemed watery and tender, even dogs would find her loving. There was no man she couldn't get. Once she set her sights on Marion, I had no chance. I remember leaving the school heartbroken and getting on the bus. The bus rushed off the bridge, crashed into the river, and then I lost consciousness. But why was I on the bus? My head hurt, I couldn't remember. I swallowed and hesitated to speak. Marion, why are you here? If he and Molly were still together, he should be home with his wife. If they broke up, his girlfriend wouldn't be me. Because I hated Molly, I would never accept anything she had used. Marion's brows furrowed with some impatience, and he said, Celia, is it fun to keep making trouble like this? What does he mean? Is he annoyed with me? Are you kidding me? Am I, Celia, such a troublesome person? Marion, I just realized today how narcissistic you are. Did I ask you to take care of me? Marion was choked by my words, gritted his teeth, and threw a phone over to me. The hospital called me. I came as soon as I could. What more do you want? I picked up the phone in confusion, and before I could unlock it, he said, You want a divorce, now you even threaten suicide. I'm really busy every day. I don't have time to deal with your drama. Divorce? Suicide? Are these things I would do? The door was opened and closed angrily. Marion was no longer in the hospital room. I stared at the phone, right. The phone must have something to help me remember. There were some selfies of me in the photo album and some photos with Marion. Wedding photos. My head started to hurt again. Why did I suddenly lose 10 years of memory? Even though he looked a bit older, he also had the charm of a mature man. He seemed quite wealthy too. The hospital room I was staying in was not only private but also looked very high-end. I was the one who requested the divorce. But why? Wasn't that like smashing my own golden rice bowl? The door opened again, and a meticulously dressed woman walked in on high heels. It was Molly. I had to admit, she had maintained herself well and looked just like I remembered. I heard from Marion that you damaged your brain, she scoffed as she sat down in the chair. Celia, you're already this old, yet you're still so childish? Even though I had amnesia, I wasn't an idiot. Molly was clearly here to show off. No wonder I wanted a divorce. Does your mom know you're following in her footsteps? I asked. The reason I disliked Molly was because her mother had intruded into my parents' marriage, causing my mother to pass away from depression. I would never forgive them, so after I grew up, I changed my last name to my mother's. Molly's face showed a brief moment of awkwardness before she put on a pretentious expression. No matter how stubborn you are, Marion doesn't love you. If it weren't for his mother insisting on honoring the childhood engagement arranged with your mother, Marion would never have married you. The more you act out, the further you push Marion away. Now he takes me everywhere, unlike you, who only knows how to cry and make a scene like an old hag. So that was the reason. I was a victim of this arranged marriage. Slap. I slapped her hard across the face. Molly covered her face, looking at me in disbelief, gritting her teeth. How dare you hit me? Slap. I raised my hand and slapped her on the other side of her face, standing on the hospital bed and glaring down at her. The first slap was for my mother, and the second one was for me. Just as I was about to deliver a third slap, Marion returned. He grabbed my hand and demanded to know why I hit Molly. Seeing my former crush turned into a scumbag made me feel nauseous. I said viciously, I hit her, so what? Call the police if you dare. Apologize to Molly. Marion's tone was harsh, shielding Molly behind him. I didn't know what kind of life I had led after marrying Marion, but it must have been miserable, otherwise, Molly wouldn't dare provoke me to my face. But now, I didn't remember any of it. Ignorance is fearless. I sneered, looking at Marion with contempt. I won't apologize to a dog. Why don't you show me how it's done, Mr. Marion? Molly panicked. Who are you calling a dog? I glanced at her. Of course, you, both. Dog, man and woman. Marion's expression was extraordinarily complex. After a while, he managed to utter, you shrew. Molly whimpered, Marion, my face hurts. Marion glared at me, then took Molly to get her face checked. Behind Marion's back, Molly shot me a triumphant look. I picked up the water cup on the bedside table and threw it at her, laugh, you ugly woman. The cup was blocked by Marion, bounced off the wall, and shattered into pieces. The shards rebounded and were about to cut Molly when Marion quickly pulled her behind him, injuring his own arm. Marion, Molly screamed. Marion clutched his bleeding arm, gave me a dark look, and left the room. Feeling that my body was fine, I checked myself out of the hospital. But as soon as I walked out of the hospital, I was confused. I didn't know where to go. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Celia, is that you? A weary male voice. Sorry, I had an accident and might have hurt my head. Who is this? The man on the other end suddenly became very agitated. Where are you? I'll come find you. Half an hour later, a black Mercedes stopped in front of me. The man looked anxious, and with a few long strides, he was in front of me, pulling me into his arms. You're all right now. When I saw his face, I realized this wasn't simple. It was Tinsley. The law school heartthrob half the girls on campus liked. Did I really manage to get both of them? Celia, you're amazing. But then I remembered I wasn't divorced yet, and it felt a bit awkward. I pushed Tinsley away and cleared my throat. Sorry, Tinsley. I don't remember what happened between us. Can you? Before I could finish, Tinsley unceremoniously shoved me into the car. We'll talk about it when we get back. Back where? Could it be that I was already living with Tinsley? Oh my God, how did this happen? Tinsley seemed to be in a much better mood, otherwise, why would he have been smiling the whole way? The car drove into the community underground parking, and I clung to the seatbelt, unwilling to get out. If I really go back with him, what if we're alone, wouldn't that be? I think I'm still not divorced. We shouldn't. I spoke cautiously, sneaking a glance at Tinsley's reaction. Unexpectedly, he said, what are you thinking? This is your home. My home? Tinsley laughed. To be precise, it's the house you bought for yourself. Marion doesn't know. Then how do you know? And how can your car get into my parking garage? Tinsley sighed and rubbed his forehead, because I also live here. I breathed a sigh of relief, so we were neighbors. Well, I thought we were that kind of relationship, and I was morally condemning myself the whole way here. Tinsley suddenly leaned in, his breath enveloping me. He looked into my eyes seriously. I'm pursuing you, but you haven't agreed yet. Tinsley led me to my doorstep, where there was a fingerprint lock. I placed my thumb on it, and the door opened. I hesitated to go in, and Tinsley seemed to read my mind. Do you want me to keep you company? My face instantly turned red, and I snapped, I just want to know more about what happened before. Tinsley opened the door and walked in casually, with a teasing smile. Don't overthink it, I meant the same thing. There was indeed no trace of Marion in this house. It was very clean and bright, it seemed I had cleaned up before I left. Tinsley expertly took out slippers, placing a pair at my feet. These are yours. He then skillfully found the cups and coffee maker, pouring us each a cup. I sat on the sofa, feeling as if I were in someone else's home. Isn't it strange how familiar I am with your home? Tinsley leaned against the wine cabinet, his long legs crossed, and I looked up at him slightly, my heart suddenly racing. He spoke softly, several times when you got drunk, I brought you back. Did I drink because of Marion? Tinsley nodded. At first, you cried when you got drunk, then you only cursed. I pointed at my nose. I cursed? At who? Tinsley laughed. At Marion, saying he's jerk, scumbag, useless and playful. Can I just die on the spot? From Tinsley's mouth, I learned a few things. Molly returned to the country a year ago and became Marion's secretary, which led to frequent arguments between Marion and me. Later, I stopped going home altogether and started living here. Tinsley and I also met again a year ago. That night, I stumbled into the neighborhood drunk and was seen by Tinsley, who was coming home late. He brought me back to my place. I often got drunk and would call Tinsley to pick me up. What about during college? Honestly, my memory stays in our college days. I remember Marion and Molly being together, and then I got into an accident on the bus. Tinsley frowned and took a sip of coffee. Celia, have you ever thought that maybe you're not suffering from amnesia? What do you mean? Tinsley's words made my heart tighten. He pulled me to the full-length mirror, standing behind me, his voice bewitching. Look at yourself now. He then held up his phone in front of me. Now look at the photo I took of you a month ago. I carefully compared and found that the me in the mirror did indeed look younger than the one in the photo, especially in my eyes. The me in the photo was full of fatigue, while the me in the mirror had bright eyes, clear and naive like a college student. What's going on? Tinsley turned my shoulders, bending down to look me in the eye. Maybe this sounds unbelievable, but you are the 20-year-old Celia. You've traveled through time. I widened my eyes, trying to process Tinsley's words. He didn't seem to be joking. My phone suddenly rang, and I glanced at the caller ID, Marion. I apologized to Tinsley and walked to the window to answer the call. Who allowed you to discharge yourself without my permission? Marion's tone was unfriendly. That's funny. I'm an adult. Do I need your permission to leave the hospital? There was a brief silence on the other end, and I heard Marion sigh. Celia, stop messing around. Where are you? I'll come get you. Such inexplicable concern. Marion, you're trying to control me and Molly at the same time. No wonder you're so worn out at 30. You should take better care of yourself so you don't die young. There's nothing between Molly and me. Why don't you believe me? Marion was furious. I chuckled lightly and said, then fire Molly, and I'll believe you. Marion's tone softened. Molly hasn't made any mistakes at work. I have no reason to fire her. Celia, ask for something else. I'll agree to anything. Double standards are terrifying. No wonder college girls don't want to step into the grave of marriage. Looking at my reflection in the window, I thought, I'm not the 30-year-old Celia, so why should I put up with this nonsense? Then let's get a divorce. No way. Marion refused quickly. There will never be a record of divorce in my household registry. A man who wants everything. Just as I was about to start cursing, the phone was snatched away. Tinsley ruffled my hair, his gaze gentle but his voice cold and harsh. Marion, I heard your company is about to go public. What do you think would happen if a scandal about the CEO broke out at this time? Tinsley's words enlightened me. Marion didn't want a divorce because he was afraid it would affect the listing. Marion roared, "Who are you? Why are you with my wife?" Tinsley kept looking at me, as if seeking my approval. I viciously made a throat-slitting gesture, and Tinsley laughed. I'm Celia's attorney, Tinsley. Long time no see, old classmate. Marion completely lost it, shouting for me to take the phone. But Tinsley didn't give him the chance, directly hanging up. Tinsley smiled as he handed the phone back to me, then bent down, bracing his arms on the floor-to-ceiling window, trapping me in his embrace. The temperature suddenly rose, and I looked away, continuing the previous topic. So, how did you know I traveled through time? His warm breath blew against my ear, leaving me with nowhere to hide. He said, Celia, let me tell you a story. Tinsley didn't know at first that he would experience both great sorrow and great joy within a few days. He had liked Celia since college, but Celia liked Marion. Clearly, on that ridiculous campus male god ranking list, he and Marion were neck and neck. Clearly, on the basketball court, he repeatedly blocked Marion's shots. But Celia just couldn't see him. In their sophomore year, the bus Celia was on plunged into the river. He rushed to the hospital immediately and asked his uncle, who was the hospital director, to arrange the best treatment for Celia. When he went to see the awakened Celia with flowers, he saw Marion holding her in his arms. He threw the flowers into the trash can and didn't disturb them. He turned around and agreed to his parents' request to go abroad. Years passed in a foreign country, and Tinsley endured countless nights alone, missing Celia, until the pain became numb. He thought he had let go, but as soon as he returned to the country, he ran into a drunken Celia in the neighborhood. She had cried her makeup off, clutching Tinsley's arm, mumbling, Marion, you bastard. Tinsley clenched his fists, wanting to punch Marion in the face immediately. The girl he held in his heart was now tormented by Marion like this. Later, every time Celia got drunk, she would call Tinsley. But nothing ever happened between them. Tinsley's self-respect wouldn't allow him to take advantage of her vulnerability. He was waiting for Celia to completely walk out of her marriage with Marion. Unexpectedly, he received the news of Celia's death. After hearing that Celia had drowned by jumping into the river, he fell ill. With a high fever, Tinsley regretted in a daze. If he had been braver, confessed his feelings to Celia sooner, or resolutely taken her away, it wouldn't have come to this. His heart ached densely. Tinsley couldn't escape the nightmare, so he went to pray at an ancient temple. An old monk meditating spoke a verse. Coming and going without a trace, what happens when one leaves is the same as when one comes. Tinsley wanted to ask for clarity, but suddenly the stars shifted, and he was back on the day Celia jumped into the river. He trembled as he dialed Celia's number, hearing her say, "Sorry, I had an accident and might have hurt my head." "Who is this?" The intense surprise almost made Tinsley's heart leap out of his chest. It wasn't until he saw Celia that he was more certain. She was the 20-year-old Celia, the one still vibrant and unscathed by life's hardships. This time, he was going to hold on to her tightly. "So you're saying, I already died, and then you prayed to the gods and brought me back?" I couldn't believe it, a novel plot had come true. Tinsley's expression went from deep affection to helplessness in just a second. "Celia, I'm confessing my love to you." I nodded, "I know. But the fact that I traveled through time is more shocking to me. So now that I'm here, is the me from 10 years ago still around? Won't I disappear out of nowhere? I don't know either." Tinsley sighed, leaning in to hold me in his arms. "I only know that you are hard to come by, and I don't want to lose you again. But, I'm still not divorced." Tinsley's voice was firm, "I'll handle it." After seeing Tinsley off, I took a comfortable bath and was about to lie on the bed to study the high-tech of this era when Marion's call came again. "Celia, you can't trust Tinsley. He's approaching you to get back at me." I sneered, "Get back at you? How? Does he like Molly too?" Marion paused, "He is Molly's ex-boyfriend. He dated Molly when they were abroad. A year ago, Molly wanted to return to the country and broke up with him, and then he also came back. Celia, he must have bad intentions approaching you." I snorted, "Really? What do you mean by telling me this now? We're all adults, I don't seem to be at a disadvantage, right? Besides, when you first got together with me, didn't you have an agenda too? If it wasn't for your mom making you marry me, would you have broken up with Molly?" I heard Molly calling him, and then he hung up. But this matter, I still wanted to hear from Tinsley personally. Molly and I did date briefly. When we were abroad, we were college classmates, so there was a sense of familiarity. But later I realized I didn't love her, so I broke up with her. Then why did you return to the country just as she did? I blurted out, then realized I seemed to be jealous. Tinsley smiled without saying a word, looking at me the whole time, making me feel uncomfortable all over. I didn't come back for her, I came back for you. I once overheard her on the phone saying she wanted to reconnect with Marion after returning to the country. I admit my thoughts were despicable at the time. I thought, if she took Marion away, would you then be mine? The air seemed to stagnate. I only felt my heart was about to leap out of my chest. Tinsley half knelt in front of me, looking up at me, kissing my hand like a devout follower. Celia, I can't wait any longer. With Tinsley's help, Marion and I smoothly got divorced. I don't know what method he used to persuade Marion, but that doesn't matter. I took Tinsley to visit my mom. I hadn't come to my mom's grave for a while, and there were many fallen leaves on it. Tinsley patiently picked them up one by one and placed a bouquet of flowers. He held my hand and whispered to the tombstone. Madam, I'm Tinsley. I really like your daughter, you can rest assured and leave her to me. A butterfly landed on the tombstone, flapping its wings. Tinsley gently kissed my forehead. Look, she agreed. I leaned into Tinsley's arms, my face buried in his coat, blushing. Tinsley started preparing for our wedding. I thought it was too fast. I just divorced Marion, isn't this a bit inappropriate? Tinsley paused while applying body wash for me, then pressed against my lower back, pulling me into his arms. Celia, are you saying you can't let go of Marion? His distinct fingers roamed, and my rebuttal was fragmented. I didn't mean that. He ignored those simple words and continued igniting the fire. I heard his deep voice, Celia, you are mine, only mine. The wedding was scheduled for 3 months later, the day before my birthday. Tinsley said that this way we could celebrate our wedding anniversary and then my birthday. Lately, I've been busy picking out wedding dresses, trying them on, and enjoying every moment of it. Tinsley was very busy, but he still made a lot of time to be with me. When he was with me, Tinsley rarely answered his phone unless it was something very important. That day, while I was trying on wedding dresses, his phone rang again. This time, he didn't hang up as usual but got up, apologized, and said he needed to take the call. If you have something to do, go ahead. I'm just trying on wedding dresses, you don't need to stay with me all the time. Tinsley nodded, walked a few meters away with the phone before answering it. I turned around and looked at myself in the mirror. I don't really like this one, I want to try some others. The clerk agreed and helped me take off the wedding dress, letting me pick a new one. I wandered in front of the display racks, examining each dress. From the fitting room door's row, I picked all the way to the row by the door. At this moment, Tinsley was just 3 meters away from me outside the door. My hand was on a wedding dress, unconsciously fiddling, my heart pounding. You messed it up first. Just leave it alone. Tinsley deliberately lowered his voice. I couldn't hear it clearly, but I could sense his unintended irritation. The person on the other end of the phone seemed to be arguing with him. All right, just listen to me now. Hang up. I heard Tinsley end the call, hurriedly walking a few steps towards the inner display racks. Unexpectedly, he didn't notice me and walked straight to the fitting room. I quickly moved to another row of display racks, and then Tinsley came towards me under the clerk's guidance. Not satisfied with the previous one? His voice was as gentle as usual, as if he was a different person from the one on the phone just now. I tentatively asked, was the call about something important? Yes, I have to go to the law firm this afternoon, I might not be able to have dinner with you. I obediently nodded, not saying anything more. But the doubts in my heart deepened. I've already divorced, what important matter could there still be between them? Just now, his phone was on the low stool, and when it rang, I glanced at it. Although he didn't save the contact, Marion's number is too distinctive, ending in 4 nines. Tinsley drove me home and then left. After he left, I called Marion, pretending that I had left something at his place. Will you be home this afternoon? I need to come by to pick something up. What is it? I can mail it to you. No need, the postage is too expensive. I'll come get it myself. Marion laughed mockingly. Celia, you took millions from me, why pretend to be poor? I have something to do this afternoon, let's talk another day. Marion hung up the phone, and I dialed Tinsley's law firm. Mr. Tinsley is not coming to the office today. May I take a message? No, that's fine. Thank you. The clear sky from the morning had turned into overcast clouds at some point, and the living room was enveloped in darkness. I rubbed my phone while curling up on the sofa, my mind tangled with thoughts and finding no answers. I only realized I had dozed off when I felt a slight weight on me. Tinsley had just covered me with a blanket, his hands still hovering as he smiled and asked, "Why not sleep in the bed?" I didn't know when I had fallen asleep. I rubbed my face and was about to speak when my stomach growled. Tinsley couldn't help but laugh. Hungry? I was so tired that I fell asleep and forgot to have dinner, I said. What do you want to eat? He tucked a strand of my hair behind my ear. I grabbed his hand and rubbed my face against it. I want to eat noodles. When Tinsley was cooking noodles, he left his phone on the coffee table in the living room. With his back to me, I looked at the phone, hesitated for a while, and then picked it up. Since we got together, he said he changed all his passwords to my birthday to make me feel secure. But at this moment, I wanted to know if he was really sincere or just betting that I wouldn't check. What are you looking at, Celia? Tinsley suddenly appeared behind me, and I turned around in a panic, dropping the phone on the floor. I accidentally spilled water on your phone, just wiping it off for you. Tinsley put down the noodles, picked up the phone, and handed it to me with a smile. I told you I wouldn't lie to you. My phone, you can look at it any time. Tinsley held my fingers and pressed the digits 1-2-0-5 on the unlock screen. My birthday. The lock screen opened. He opened the chat app, and my chat was at the top. When did you pin my chat? I pinned it a long time ago. Do you think I'm heartless like you? I can't bear to let anyone else's messages be above yours. I bit my lip guiltily. In this situation, if I really checked, it would only make things awkward. I put his phone aside and turned to eat the noodles. Who wants to check on you? I'm not that bored. Tinsley crouched beside me and said, Celia, let's go get our marriage license tomorrow. I swallowed a mouthful of noodles. So soon? Tinsley suddenly stood up, pretending to be angry, stomping his foot and putting his hands on his hips. Are you having second thoughts? You heartbreaker, humph. I laughed so hard I almost snorted noodles out of my nose. Early the next morning, we went to the registry office. Tinsley had arranged everything in advance, so the process was quick. He held me, unable to hide his smile. I finally married you, Celia. Holding the marriage certificate, I felt a moment of daze. This was my first marriage in my memory. But why couldn't I feel genuinely happy? At night, I woke up from a nightmare, and the space beside me was empty. Instinctively, I didn't make a sound, nor did I put on slippers, and walked barefoot off the bed. A faint light seeped through the crack of the study door. I held my breath and pressed my ear to it. Why are you in such a hurry? There are still 3 months left, right? I know what I'm doing, you don't need to remind me. The same irritated tone as yesterday. I returned to the bedroom, pretended to sleep, and soon Tinsley came back. I waited until his breathing steadied before quietly getting up. In the darkness, the light from the phone was piercing. I opened the call log and saw 4 nines. When I found Betty, she was feeding the chickens. She had been my nanny since I was a child. After my mother passed away, she continued to take care of me until I grew up. But I could sense that she wasn't happy to see me. In fact, she was very angry. She had been working in the yard for as long as I had been standing there. Suddenly, a chicken flew onto me, and without thinking, she raised her broom and chased it away. She still remembered that I was afraid of chickens. Betty. My nose stung with emotion. Betty sighed, dropped the broom, and looked at my face. You insisted on listening to that young punk who said I stole money and drove me away. Now, what do you want from me? Betty's short sentence was packed with information that I couldn't process all at once. I actually let Marion convince me to drive Betty away. Slap. I gave myself a hard slap. Betty, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have treated you like that, but I lost my memory and can't remember anything after I turned 20, so I had to come find you. What happened? How did you lose your memory? Was it that Marion's doing? I'll go find him. No. I grabbed Betty. Marion and I are already divorced. Betty was first shocked, then sighed regretfully, and finally sat down slowly. Divorced? Good, it's good that you're divorced. You were out of your mind back then, completely mesmerized by his looks. I gently rested my head on her lap. Betty, please help me. My wedding with Tinsley went ahead as scheduled. I held a bouquet of lilies of the valley and walked towards Tinsley. Under the gaze of everyone, I took his hand, kissed him, and made a vow for a lifetime. The officiant asked the groom to speak, and Tinsley's hand holding the microphone trembled slightly. Celia, he called my name. I've waited too long for this wedding. Since I was 19, I often dreamed that you married me. Today, my dream has finally come true. I'm really happy, Celia. Thank you for being willing to marry me. Tinsley was so emotional that the best man handed him a tissue. He turned to take it and wiped his tears. I took the microphone and smiled. Tinsley, I also have some good news to tell you. The best men started to tease. Oh, there's going to be a little Tinsley. Tinsley told them to stop messing around, but his eyes glanced at my belly, silently asking me, really? It's not a pregnancy. It's something better than being pregnant. What is it? Tinsley looked at me expectantly. I'm giving up my inheritance rights. I grinned, and Tinsley was stunned. Marion suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Celia, what did you say? Marion ran over from the entrance, trampling the flowers on both sides of the aisle. He pushed Tinsley aside, grabbed my shoulders, and asked fiercely, are you serious? Tinsley finally reacted and tried to push Marion away, but Marion kept pressing me if it was true. I pretended to be innocent. Of course it's true. The shares my grandfather left me, I can handle them however I want. Marion looked like he wanted to swallow me alive, his fingers digging deeply into my flesh. You damn liar! How could you give them up? Enough! Tinsley roared, punching Marion down. The crowd finally reacted, and the groomsmen held Marion back, causing chaos on and off the stage. Marion looked like a ferocious beast at that moment, and if not careful, he would bite my neck off. Tinsley remained quite restrained. He even smiled at me, trying to distance himself. Celia, I don't understand what you're saying. He walked over to take my hand. Let's finish the wedding first, okay? His expression was as sincere and pitiful as when he begged me to marry him. I didn't let go of his hand, calmly looked at him, picked up the microphone, and let my voice be heard by everyone present. Tinsley, from beginning to end, it was a setup by you and Marion. Right? Because I was divorcing Marion, you took over to deceive me. There was no so-called time travel, I just lost my memory. You made up such an absurd lie, betting that the more absurd it was, the more I would believe it. I've remembered everything now. You and Marion are half-brothers. You wanted the 20% shares in my hands to acquire my grandfather's company. Sorry, I can't let you get your way. That day at Betty's house, she handed me an envelope. I thought you were sending me money, and I felt insulted, so I never opened it. I tore open the envelope and took out a bank card, and a letter fell out. In the letter, I told Betty everything that had happened to me. After I fell into the water from the bus in college, my never-before-seen grandfather found me. He resented my mom for not listening to him and insisted on marrying my dad, so they cut off contact. But now he was old and frail, and I was his only descendant, so he wanted to groom me to be his heir. My grandfather gave me 20% of the company's original shares, but he was afraid I was too young and impulsive, so he stipulated that I could only hold them after I turned 30. And all of this was overheard by Tinsley, who happened to be at the hospital visiting his uncle that day. Tinsley told his and Marion's father, and their father immediately ordered Marion to pursue me. It was a 10-year-long conspiracy. Until I accidentally discovered everything, and in despair, I chose to end my life. There were gasps from the audience below. On stage, Marion slowly knelt down, muttering in a daze, "It's over, it's all over." Tinsley still remained composed. He said in a low voice, Celia, I can explain. There's no need, please let go. I struggled twice but couldn't break free. Tinsley had already squeezed my wrist red, and the dense sweat from his palm soaked into my skin, the damp touch making me irritable. Let go of me! Bang! The metallic clang instantly echoed through the hall as I smashed the microphone onto Tinsley's head. Blood beads oozed from his brow, accumulating more and more, sliding down his brow bone and dripping onto the ground. Celia, please, Tinsley didn't bother to wipe away the blood, still gripping me tightly. Just give me one more chance to explain. The hatred in my heart gradually rose, and I said coldly, I don't want to hear it. You and Marion both disgust me. The light in Tinsley's eyes finally dimmed, they shattered and fell apart. I bit down hard on his arm. Tinsley winced in pain but still didn't let go. Until the taste of blood spread in my mouth. I felt his arm trembling, his muscles instinctively resisting. With his other hand, he pulled me into his arms in this position, patting my back soothingly. It's okay, sweetheart, it doesn't hurt, it's okay. Tears finally burst forth. My head was buried in Tinsley's chest, smelling the faint scent of his cologne. I said, let me go, Tinsley, please. The hand on my back stopped, and Tinsley softly asked, if you go, are you not coming back? I can't think straight right now, give me some time. Hearing me say this, Tinsley gradually loosened his grip. As I turned to leave, he said, Celia, I'll wait for you. No one stopped me as I stumbled out of the hotel in my wedding dress. Sitting in the taxi, I finally let go of all my strength. The driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror and tentatively said, Miss, there's no obstacle in life you can't overcome. Look on the bright side. If you want to cry, just cry. I've got plenty of tissues in the car. In the hospital room, my grandfather sighed and stroked my hair after hearing everything I said. Celia, you finally have the brains your mom lacked. I smiled through my tears, yes, your intelligence skipped a generation. Take a good rest for a while, maybe go abroad for a vacation. Once you're in a better state, come back to the company. Grandpa, I don't need a vacation, I said. Please arrange for me to join the company immediately, but I want to start from the bottom. Grandpa was surprised. The bottom? Why? I handed him a peeled apple and smiled. Although I can rely on connections, I still want to rely on my own abilities. I didn't give up on the inheritance of the shares, but I discussed with Grandpa to delay the inheritance. I also didn't see Tinsley again and entrusted a lawyer to handle the divorce. A month later, I entered the CEO's office, starting as an administrative assistant. The busy work quickly made me forget those 2 unpleasant marriages. No one in the company knew I was the chairman's granddaughter. Some people were nice to me, while others made things difficult. I accepted it all with grace. My colleague Lorne often asked me out for meals. I knew he had feelings for me, so after refusing a few times, I simply told him that I had been divorced twice. But Lorne said he didn't mind, so what? You just have 4 more certificates than others. I have chef certificates, diving instructor certificates, grade 2 athlete certificates, and architect certificates. I also have 4 more certificates than you. I was amused by his unexpected words and agreed to his invitation. I'll pick you up on Saturday night. Okay. The restaurant was called Celia's, and Lorne asked for my opinion. I accidentally saw the name of this restaurant and thought the owner had good taste. I smiled and said, I hope the food is as tasteful as the name. The menu was unique, with strange names for each dish that gave no clue what they were. Lorne and I looked at each other and joked that the owner loved being mysterious. We then called the waiter for recommendations. It's your first time here, I recommend trying our couple's set menu 1994. Lorne was surprised. Celia, you were born in 1994, right? Wow, this restaurant is meant for you. A hint of suspicion rose in my heart, but I shook my head, laughing at myself for overthinking. Let's go with this set menu. When the dishes arrived, the main courses were noodles and steak. The waiter placed the noodles in front of me, and Lorne said, Give me the noodles, you have the steak. Just as he was about to reach for it, the waiter stopped him. Sorry sir, our boss has a rule that the lady must eat the noodles. Lorne looked displeased. Your boss is too controlling. We're customers, we should eat as we like. Seeing the waiter in a difficult position, I quickly reassured him. I'll have the noodles, I quite like noodles. I picked up the noodles with chopsticks and put them in my mouth. The familiar taste spread in my mouth. It was as if I was back to those many nights when I begged Tinsley to cook me a bowl of noodles. I finished the meal nervously. Whatever Lorne said, I forgot it all, just wanting to leave quickly. When paying the bill, the waiter asked me how the noodles were. I instinctively replied, too much sesame oil. Dora had worked at the restaurant for 3 months and had never seen her boss like this. After hearing her report on customer feedback, Dora saw the boss's stern face suddenly become flustered. He threw down the ingredients he was handling and rushed out of the kitchen. Dora hurriedly followed, only to see he standing still at the kitchen door. She peeked outside from the side and saw the backs of the couple who had just left the restaurant. Was the boss looking at them? Dora didn't understand. If they were acquaintances, why not go and say hello? Tinsley never thought he would lose Celia. He didn't intend to deceive her, but some things, once wrong, are just wrong. He had actually been secretly taking over part of his father's company to make his father and Marion lower their guard, cooperating with them in this charade. He thought that once he truly gained control of the company, he would confess everything to Celia. As for Celia's grandfather's shares, he never planned to take them. But no one can control fate. He didn't wait for Celia, he only waited for a divorce. Suddenly, he felt tired. He left his father's company and opened a restaurant called Celia's. He even set many ridiculous rules, hoping for an unexpected reunion with Celia. Hearing Dora's feedback, his first reaction was to assume it was Celia. Too much sesame oil, Celia had often said, even if he had only added a drop. But he didn't chase after her. Because he saw Celia stumble when she walked out, and the man immediately held her tightly. Until their figures disappeared around the corner, their hands never let go. At that moment, he finally understood. Some people, once missed, are gone forever. The company provided everyone with a health checkup package as a year-end benefit. I put the health report aside as soon as I got it. My colleague Ella curiously leaned over. Celia, why aren't you looking at it? I stared at my computer without turning around. I don't want to see it. I avoid doctors. Ella laughed at my cowardice. How about I look at it for you? Sure, but be gentle if you find anything wrong. I might not be able to handle it. Ella laughed out loud and opened my report. Oh my gosh, Celia, I've never seen you take care of yourself. How is your body in such good shape? I asked curiously, what do you mean? Ella pointed at one of the indicators. This value is at the level of a girl in her early 20s. And you avoid doctors? I think you're just fearless. Quickly, share your health secrets. I put away the report and told Ella. It must be a mistake. I'll go check it again another day.